So we're going to talk about getting your tenant ready so that you can consume Copilot. For the first 3 episodes of season 1 of Copilot Zero to Hero, everyone was telling you about an AI council and plan for this and this adoption, and you need to think about AI differently and all of those things. But this is the first time we're actually talking about what you need to do at an organization level before you decide to hand out Copilot license, because everyone doesn't do this. Let me qualify that. People get pulled in, like me, into companies that said, hey, we've given our executives Copilot licenses. Can you tell them what it is? And I've got customers that have been influenced by Microsoft to buy 500, 1,000 licenses at a time. And then they go, well, shit, man, this is very expensive. We need to convince business that it's okay, because I don't work for Microsoft, so I can say these things. They will switch shit on in your tenant and they will help you do it. And the licensed people will do it because they hit the KPI. We're not here to do that. We'd rather you stagger your approach. For those who don't know me, my name is Alistair Pugin. I own a company called Why Modernize, and I help customers move to the cloud efficiently and effectively. My background is in, I was actually a COBOL programmer, but I've spent the last, hold on. Windows 95 is 30 years old. 30 years and 3 days. What's today's date? Today's the 26th, right? Yes.
That's right, 26th.
Windows 95 is 30 years old in 2 days. It was released to manufacturing, and we launched Windows 95 as a DSP partner on the 24th of August in Pardon Island, 1995. That's how old I am. So I've been doing this for a while. I specialize in helping customers understand what knowledge management is, or information management, or enterprise information management, or content services, whatever you want to call it, and that's what I do. So why Microsoft 365 Copilot? And this has been an interesting conversation of late. These pictures are for you, Karika.
Thanks, Al.
And everyone's having this conversation. Why? And I think we've had a full circle moment where, ChatGPT or GPT-4 is 2 years old, and we've seen GPT-5. That's how fast it's done, and GPT-5 is available inside of your Microsoft 365 tenant. It dropped about a week and a half ago. And everyone's been talking about AI. So why do I think, and it's a massive shift, because I use Perplexity Pro, let me qualify that, but why do I think Microsoft 365 Copilot should be the Copilot of choice for organizations? Let's start with the integration across platform. You're not going to, there's more AIs joining. Yeah, we are an AI note-taker inclusive organization. We've got 372 people on the call, but 300 of them are actually AIs. So you need to get used to that. So why do I think Microsoft 365 Copilot should be the place to go when wanting to pay for AI? It's because it integrates into everything. So it's not just about the chat stuff that you get and you can ask for a recipe, or how to do PowerShell, or all of those things, Vibe everything, Vibe IT, not just Vibe coding. But it lives inside of your most commonly used applications. And that's the value. It's always been about, the world's best all-rounder, the integration into that. You're never going to get Gemini. You could try and bake it into various applications. Google, well, that's Gemini. Anthropic. I love Perplexity for other reasons. But if you're looking for an all-encompassing world's best all-rounder from an AI perspective, throw the $30 at a problem, and you'll get the best experience. And that's why I think Microsoft 365 Copilot is and they're going to win the war, right? Just like they won the war against Netscape. They didn't go up against Chrome. They went up against Netscape, and Netscape eventually folded. And that's how Internet Explorer won the browser wars. So why? Why Copilot, right? Because, when you look at the platform and how it's baked into what you do every day, these are some of the underpinnings. And you've seen some of these slides where we talk about, being able to deploy AI at scale inside of your organization, which is massively valuable. Jackie, are you in a plane or in an office? Because
I'm here.
Okay, it's like you're jumping on a plane, and I don't know where you were, and I've lost my train of thought. So,
Sorry.
when we talk about AI and where you want to go, there's a couple of slides here, and I don't want to labor the point, but these are the take-homes because I have to create slides that you can actually take home. So this is just, covering where we are and things that Jason talked about right in the beginning, the use cases for AI, the AI journey, the AI council stuff, understanding all of these things. So some of these things in here is really just for the slide, and then some of the things I want to talk to. But I think there's about 60 slides. So I've baked it so that you can take it home. We'll upload it to the GitHub repo, and then you can repurpose these things at your own leisure. So from an implementation perspective, I think we've spoken about um, what you're doing on the top, the user enablement side, understanding what the scenario library is. I don't know if anyone's played around with the Copilot Lab or even looked at the user survey kit from a persona mapping perspective. That was vitally important that everyone spoke about in the beginning. You need to understand what your users do inside of the organization so that you can empower them with the right, well, not the right Copilot, but how to use Copilot efficiently inside of the organization and understand those business scenarios. It's business analytics 101. We've been doing it for the last 40 years. It's the same, but you're just using a different tool. If you speak to Jackie, she's RPA'd most of the continent. She's literally single-handedly RPA'd most of the continent, and if people didn't want it, she beat them with a stick, and then eventually they gave in. So she's pivoting from RPA to Gen AI, but much of the same thing. With RPA, it was the same thing. How do you do your job? What do you do? What are the tools that you use? Let's make it easier. And that's what AI does. It reduces your time to value. We were stuck with Karika in that trough of disillusionment when she was swearing at, and she doesn't swear, when she was swearing at Copilot in the early days, right? And I think we've sort of, climbing that bottom of the hype cycle from Gartner. So I'm quite excited where everything has landed. So from a technical readiness perspective, there's a few things that we really want to go through, and I'm going to cover most of those things. Now, I don't know if anyone is measuring where they are on their journey to our robot overlords, right? Because you have to address them as that, right? They are going to be in charge when AGI lands, right? Artificial general intelligence, right? That's where Jason's brain is going to be sucked into the vortex, and we're just going to make baby Jasons with the same mental capacity as him. And then we're going to run him around, and everyone's going to be happy. So I'm not sure where on the journey you are, because, we talk about rolling this out. Hold on, someone. Oh, Karika's talking about their first completed our first pilot, not to be confused with Copilot, right? So this is a
It's a
proof of
pilot
value,
of
right?
Copilot. Not
Okay.
confusing at all.
No, not confusing at all. So let's move on. I mean, all these things are there. Like I mentioned earlier on, you need to actually do persona mapping, understand a day in the life of someone like HR or marketing. These usage scenarios or scenario libraries are available to you at adoption.microsoft.com/Copilot. You can go download it, read it. I encourage you to do that because they talk about the day in the life and how it plugs in, right? So these are all end user stuff. So let's have a look at real world technical readiness, right? I think it's important to understand it. And don't feel sad like the little kid on the screen, right? He's actually not sad, and he lost his ice cream. So if anyone watched Eddie Murphy and you got no ice cream, you can afford. I don't know if anyone's watched Delirious by Eddie Murphy, but yes, if you have, you'll understand where I'm at. So let's go through these things. I encourage organizations before they assign Copilot licenses to users to actually go through this. I mean, the first one is the Copilot optimization assessment. You can click on the link, it takes you to a page, you fill in answers, and it gives you some information back. Please, if you haven't done it already, spend the 20 minutes going through this. It's going to take you less than 20 minutes. Jason probably timed it, how long it takes to go through the Copilot, the optimization assessment, right? Spend the time and work through that. Jason, do you know how long it takes to fill this in?
It takes more time to get the right people in the room, but once you have the right people in the room, it's about 25 minutes to fill out the survey.
Yeah. And everyone on today's calls got, even if you don't have Copilot license, you've got access to Copilot chat. And if your organization's deployed Copilot agents using the pay-as-you-go model, you will also have access to the agents that your organization's built. And we'll talk about agents in a bit. So go and have a look at the optimization assessment. Please start there. From there, we typically move on to applying data security controls. And these slides are old. Microsoft hasn't updated their own slides, Jason. This is nudge, nudge, wink, wink. So when we look at running through the optimization assessment, 30 minutes it takes to actually get there. But like Jason says, you need the right people in the room. It's not specific to IT, so you need more than IT. This is not an IT product. This is a business productivity tool that IT manages. Understand that, right? Now, like I said earlier on, and it's not called restricted SharePoint search. It's actually called restricted content discovery. I'm going to go back one. And the reason why Microsoft wants you to use this, I recommend against it. I recommend that you actually go and fix your data. Right. So the reason why they've enabled this sort of stopgap, right? Because everyone wants a license, and we've got a ton of data living inside of SharePoint and inside of OneDrive, and we have no idea who's managing it, who's got access to it, because I can give everyone in my organization access to the HR folder that's living in a document library and not send them a notification, and they won't know that they have access to it. But if for some reason someone sends them the URL to that copy link and send it to someone, they'll have access to that. So this is to speed up your adoption of platform while you build an information management governance strategy to identify, classify, and categorize content inside of your organization. This is just to prohibit, the Google search appliance debacle of 2007 happening inside of your organization. Because if anyone on this call, I'll buy you a beer. I'll buy you a crate of beers if you can actually show me a report where you know what permissions you have inside of your tenant. Beer of choice, right? And the reason why you don't have it is because Microsoft doesn't give it to you freely. I'm just going to write the report down. So this is the easiest way to prohibit people from looking at files that they shouldn't have access to, even though we can give you import beer. I'll even give you gluten-free beer. The reason why we want to run through this is because there should be a document library and a SharePoint site that's called HR, and chances are you have confidential information living in there. If you are a company that produces products, you might have intellectual property living inside of SharePoint as well. So start at the beginning. If you're hell-bent on switching, Copilot on for everyone, at least go and start. And I'll show you what this looks like when I jump into the demo. How to restrict content discovery. So literally what you're doing is you're saying, hey, Copilot, we know that you have access to search and the semantic index. We're going to remove this from it. That's what SharePoint restricted search did. Content discovery works the other way around. But when we actually look at what it does it's exactly what I've just said right now. So it doesn't disable organization-wide search. Well, yes, it does it the other way around. With restricted content discovery, it means that no longer do they restrict the entire environment, just specific areas that you actually want to switch on. Why did I go home? Wow, that just jumped all the way to the end. Where were we? Apologies.
That was nice and short. Thanks, Al.
Stay well. If you're looking for me, you can find me on the socials at Alistair P. Wouldn't you just love that? All right, so let's have a look. When it enabled, depending on what application you are in that has a search bar, it's going to pop up and say, hey, we've excluded specific things from your environment. Right? So it's vitally important that you not waste time, spend time. Again, it comes back to knowing your data. And, it will give you a view into, hey, there's things that you're not going to be able to search for. So if your users have been searching across HR, understand that this breaks that. Even HR users will not be able to search across HR. Understand that it breaks your search. So as much as it's a stopgap, it doesn't discriminate. It switches it off for everyone. Yeah? So make sure you understand how all of that works. When we look at security best practices, So that's you want to dip your toes in the water, but you don't want to get belly button deep. Start with restricted content discovery so that Copilot doesn't discover information about other people inside of your organization. When we look at, and this is where the real meat lives. When you start looking at data that's inside of your organization, and I don't know how many people have actually gone to purview.microsoft.com or heard of the term data security. And I have a bone to pick with Microsoft because data security should include retention or at least data lifecycle management, but it doesn't because that now lives in compliance and there's no compliance certification yet. It's coming. But when we actually look at the things that we want to do after you've decided that, hey, Copilot's a good thing, how do I secure my data? I'll give you a perfect example. We did some work for a law firm, and one of the questions from them were, and it's not specific to Copilot, but their biggest concern was the users running WhatsApp desktop. I've got WhatsApp installed on my Mac. I can drag a file straight into WhatsApp, and it goes, oh, here's a file. Okay, I just hit the send button and Ninja does files leave, right? So what we did there was, from an endpoint DLP perspective, we silently uninstalled the Microsoft Store, which is where you would install WhatsApp from, and then we silently uninstalled WhatsApp Desktop, but we gave them access to web.whatsapp.com, and then we could run DLP to monitor and prohibit them from uploading documents. And in very much the same way, you need to think along those lines when it comes to deploying Copilot. Tracy, move your head. Okay, no, that is the picture, right? It's it's scary, right? Because because yeah, okay, now you can carry on. Now you can carry on. Because I was looking at the screen and I thought she was looking at me, and I was like, oh God, what did I do? Something wrong now. Anyhow, I digress. So have a look at what you can do from a DLP perspective when you need to start worrying about endpoint management, right? And there's a whole bunch of things you can actually do, and it's license dependent. Don't get me wrong. Just because you switched on Copilot, because you can with a business premium license, you can get Copilot. It doesn't mean that you can do cool stuff with conditional access policies. It's either a P1 or a P2 license. Chances are it's going to end up in a P2 license, but we'll talk about that. From a governance, risk, and compliance perspective, you can also do a whole bunch of things when it comes to protecting your data inside of your organization from a data security posture management. And we will cover that, even though it's not in the slides. We'll talk about data security posture management when I jump into the demos. And then also from a privacy perspective, understand, and a lot of people say, well, if I upload a document to Copilot, where is it stored, right? Unlike ChatGPT and all the other ones, the perplexities, you've got enterprise data protection. So whatever content you're throwing at your Copilot, doesn't matter if it's Copilot in Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Outlook, if you upload a document from a file share or wherever your storage is and you dump it at that, there's security guardrails in place and your data lives inside of your tenant. Microsoft doesn't train their LMs against your data, unlike Twitter does, and obviously Meta will do it as well. So understand that there's massive security guardrails to adopting Microsoft 365 Copilot. I can't believe I'm saying this, instead of another third-party tool, because I've never liked Copilot. Sorry, Joseph, but I'm growing. I'm growing warm to the touch. So look at security. How do you manage access controls into your environment with Copilot, and what data exfiltration could possibly happen? So you need to start looking at not just knowing your data. That's important. So understand how long your data needs to live, how well you need to protect it, and then also how do you protect it from prying eyes through data loss prevention and data leak prevention, right? So retention, data lifecycle management for that. It's vitally important that you do that. Yeah, some things like that. There's certain things that goes into OneDrive. From a chat perspective, that actually lives in the Office 365 substrate, also known as Exchange, the OG platform, and we won't delve too much on that. So moving on from that, when we look at the challenges that you would normally face, the big one is data oversharing. And let me qualify this. In the old days, and some of these slides, you'll notice Where is it? Am I going too fast? There's some license requirements in these slides, but because these slides haven't been updated, they talk a lot. Right in the beginning, we talked a lot. Well, right when Copilot landed first, everyone was talking about SharePoint Advanced Management. I'm going to take you through a demo. So that gives you the governance tools like data access governance reports and a few other things. But back then, you had to license everyone that had a Copilot license with a SAM license. Today, you need one Copilot license in SAM. For the most part, there's specific components to SAM that is not switched on, like the syntax stuff. It's separate pay-as-you-go license. But all the governance tools for SharePoint Advanced Management is switched on with one Microsoft 365 Copilot license. So you've got no excuse when it comes to being able to lock down your environment, not only with sensitivity labels, but also being able to monitor what's going on there. So you shouldn't have the problem with data oversharing or data leaks. Like I just said earlier on, someone drags a document into Perplexity or into a third-party AI. We're calling it shadow AI instead of shadow IT. That's where that world is getting to. And then from an unethical perspective, understand that you've got full audit trail, and obviously Microsoft practices responsible AI. So nobody's going to ask your Microsoft 365 Copilot how to build a bomb. It's not going to work. Someone will be notified. And Jackie, when you get into the queue at the airport, please don't, if they ask you what's in your bag, say there's a bomb, because they won't let you on the plane, even if you're joking. Anyhow, important slide. We've talked about knowing your data and understanding your data and also understanding where it lives. Is your data in SharePoint? Your data should be in SharePoint because there's no other place to put it. Loop workspaces sits on top of a container using SharePoint embedded. Your chat lives inside of Exchange, and everything else, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams content lives inside of SharePoint, the content delivery network for masses. So understand where your data goes and how it's stored. Again, you're going to have to be able to classify and categorize your data if you are going to want to apply labels to data to protect them, like applying a sensitivity label on the back of an information protection policy that lives inside of your organization. Now, Microsoft recommends switching on auto label policies. It's never worked in the history of man. I don't know why they recommend it. You are not mature as an organization to understand that a compound term inside of a document is actually going to enforce a policy. Because if I typed in triple heart bypass, it doesn't necessarily mean. And you have people, you talk to people in government and they call the document a memo, but they've actually included a business case inside of that. So data classification is vitally important. Auto label policies or adaptive scope policies and adaptive protection, cool shit. But understand that you need a certain level of maturity inside of your organization for all of these things to actually work really, really well. Where you can take your hands off the wheel and Tesla will auto drive you to your destination. Vitally important that you understand what these things look like. So when we go through it, data lifecycle controls, yes, retention policies or data lifecycle management policies. How long should I keep an invoice? 7 years and then do something with it. That's to prevent. And also when we talk about zero trust, assume breach and prepare for breach. So data leak prevention is different to data loss prevention. If a nefarious character got into your environment and had full control because they've escalated a privilege and now they've got global admin rights, they've got access to all your data. So it's vitally important that you make sure that you don't keep data for longer than necessary. Now, it might be a compliance thing that says, hey, I need to keep an invoice for 7 years, or you are in construction and you need to keep the plans for building a bridge indefinitely, but get rid of the data that you no longer need. And there's tools to go have a look at rot inside of your organization. Lifecycle management policies for sites, not only content, you can switch on so that if there's no activity for 6 months and there's no retention policies or a document being flagged for retention, delete the data. You no longer need that. It's the same with data protection, data access controls, data labeling, and data classification. The access control stuff, it's more around a risk evaluation. So if someone is connecting from a coffee shop in Uzbekistan from a non-compliant device, you can do things. And this extends to AI as well. So if you follow the process, it's super simple to connect the dots. So when we look at all the tools that you can use, and it's license dependent, If you've got a Microsoft 365 E3, I'm going to say that, well, you're going to need I'm not sure if PIM is with a P1 and Entra ID governance is a separate license. Intune you should have from an endpoint DLP perspective. There's cool cloud access security broker stuff that you can do with Defender for cloud app security. So if you want to monitor risky AI or people using, Perplexity or any of the other AI tools, or you want to block it, or you want to redirect them through your CASB, or you want to do a file access policy where it applies a retention label on the fly to a document so that people can't delete it because it's a risky login. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do with Defender for Cloud Apps, right? Yeah, so a P1. So you should be able to do most of these things easily with an E1. If you've got a business premium license, we always recommend business premium. There's advanced security add-on packs that you can buy to give you some of these things, right? So conditional access policies is your friend. You should have conditional access policies in your organization. You shouldn't have security defaults on because all it's going to do is give you MFA. Purview classification, SharePoint, and Entra ID governance. I'm going to show you what that actually looks like. And then the one that's not on this list is, and this is not that new, we're going to talk about data security posture management for AI. Because it's one thing switching the damn thing on, right? Because there's a whole bunch of steps that you need to go through. It's another thing when you need to start worrying 6 months down the line what's actually happening to AI, not just Microsoft 365 Copilot, AI inside of your organization, as well as all those cool agents that you want to build, because yes, we'll talk about security when we get there. But DSPM for AI, DSPM for AI and data security investigations live inside of Purview. It's not just about insider risk, information protection, data lifecycle management, and what am I missing? Data loss prevention. There's also tools for you to manage and monitor what your organization does from an AI perspective. As long as the device is connected and they logged in with their account, you'll be able to monitor things. So, here's the bolt-ons. So when you're looking at from a holistic perspective, you'll start with a baseline, right? MFA, conditional access, at least deploy some conditional access. That might be you restricting it as a data boundary because you have to worry about data residency. So when people are out of the country, they can't get access to your environment. There's no such thing as SharePoint public sites, although you can make it public. But understand what you have and where data is stored inside of your organization. When you start moving up from an O to an M, right? And Jason, can you still buy an O? I think there's still a SKU for Office 365, right?
Yeah, some of the customers are busy transitioning from the O to the M.
Yeah. So what you get with the M is all the endpoint stuff. So I would always recommend customers, and you have to profile your users because you might give them an F3 because they're browser-based, especially customers that are moving from Google Workspace into Microsoft 365. It's not just for frontline workers. I mean, they've got Google Drive, and that's the only app that's going to run on your desktop. So you might want to transition your users across to an F3 SKU with an advanced security bolt-on if required. But understand that you get device management with it, you get Intune, you get, I think, Entra ID Plan 1 with an F3 SKU. So you don't always have to buy the most expensive license to work with Copilot inside of your organization. So there's some stuff that you can do with SharePoint Advanced Management. And as we now know, it's there when you buy one license, right? Obviously, the Rolls Royce would be if you've got an E5, because you can do all the automation that you want. Auto labeling, adaptive scopes, adaptive protection comes with an E5. It doesn't come with an E3. So I understand there are limitations to what you can do from a data security posture perspective for the data that lives inside of your environment that's going to be interrogated by AI. Make sense? I've been talking non-stop for a while now. Any questions? And if I'm going too fast,
in the chat.
I can talk slower because it's a lot to consume. All right. So let's move on. Let's jump into, instead of looking at slides. So the stuff that I'm going to go through inside of the admin center, there's actually videos in the slide deck. So you don't necessarily have to have access to admin centers. You can watch the video that's in each of the slides to give you a view into what this looks like. So I'm going to get out of slide heaven. And here's my Windows desktop, people. Oh, there's the mouse. All right. So for those who have never seen what Copilot, a licensed Copilot looks like, this is what it looks like. You've got more things on the side. Yeah, you've got pages, notebooks, and a few other things down the side. But for the most part, even if you don't have a license, and you can see GPT-5 is available, and there's some people that have been crying because GPT-4 and GPT-5 are so vastly different that the emotional attachment that they have to AI, especially Microsoft 365 Copilot using GPT-4, they no longer have, and people have been sad. It's even on the radio. But when we start looking at working out what we want to do first, and I don't know how many admins have actually gone to the M365 Admin Center and actually looked at what's available to you when you need to switch on Copilot, right? So you've got an overview. In my case, I think I've got 25 licenses in this tenant. And this is just the traditional dashboard stuff. And I do have licenses. Where is it? It's not pulling through, but if I go home, it will tell you here, 23 of 25 Copilot licenses available. So this gives you a nice overview into what's living inside of your environment rent-free. There's some dashboard stuff here. Okay. So 2 enabled users, 1 active user. That's the user that's logged into this tenant. And you can actually see the license allocation and the various workloads that it's actually been touching over. Now, if you've got 300 users, this is going to light up. I've got 1 active user, and this is my dev tenant. So you're not going to see much light up in the form of dashboards, but understand what they do. Now, the first thing you're going to do is you're actually going to head over to settings, and you're going to switch on a whole bunch of things. Now, let me explain. And Jason, Frontier is still a thing, right? All the new things are going into the Frontier side, right?
Yeah, Frontier is going to be a massive thing for us this year. Still going to be around transforming orgs and stuff, but I'll stop there, so that I don't give too much away.
So what Microsoft did to protect themselves, right, is when you switch on Copilot, you have the option to switch on all the new stuff. So like an analyst and researcher that would run and then fall over, Microsoft's protected themselves by doing 4 things. 1, they've released the work trend index document at the beginning of the year that talked about Copilot and Copilot bosses and all of those things. And then they've also talked about companies starting today. Microsoft sees them as a frontier firm. There's an entire program that supports an AI-first organization. And the features, like the analyst and researcher agents that live inside of your Copilot ecosystem, and they're going to add a whole bunch more. And there's a bunch of other agents coming. What is it? August. So we'll probably see that announcements. Ignite is in November. So you'll probably see announcements around all the new cool shit coming, probably November. I mean, next month is Apple month, and we're very excited about all the new Apple kit. And we're hoping that Apple Intelligence finally shows up and they replace Siri. But in very much the same way, you can switch on the Frontier features and you'll have access to the latest bleeding edge technology. And there's a whole bunch of things that you do, like pinning the M365 Copilot chat. Also understand that the Copilot app in Windows 11, you can either download the latest version or, if your desktop order updates, if you log in with your Copilot, your Microsoft 365 credentials, that this little one that's living here will change once you've logged in, right? So I don't know how you do identity management if the device is intra-ID joined or at least hybrid joined, and the user's logging in with their Office 365 or M365 credentials, this should auto-update depending on what sort of policies you have inside of your organization, so that this Copilot experience is exactly the same one as you would normally see in Copilot chat. Do I have it open over here? there. And then also, and we'll probably just badger Jason into finding out when they're going to move this from right to left. But this is Copilot in Teams. Yeah? All right. So all of those things you can actually go and configure at a technical level inside of the settings tab. Switch it all on. Look at data access, and there's a few things you can actually do here. From a data security and compliance perspective, it's just links into Purview. That's all it is, but I'm going to take you through Purview now. What are we actually looking at? Sharing default labels and site audits. All right. Copilot actions. They retired Copilot actions from Copilot Studio. So it means different things now. So if you've ever worked with Copilot actions inside a Copilot Studio, they launched the product and then they pulled the product and it annoyed quite a lot of people. Copilot actions is different. Also, my tenant is on a different ring. So there might be things in my tenant that's not available in your tenant. So understand that as well. And then there's other settings like a custom dictionary if you really want to do that, or if you want to look at diagnostic logs because Copilot's falling over every time, you can actually send it to Microsoft. So this is typically the first thing you'll do. You'll actually show up here and start configuring these, these panels. So pay-as-you-go billing, you don't need straight off the bat, but if you are going to be building agents and you want users inside of your organization that doesn't have Copilot licenses to consumer agents, you have to either buy a Copilot Studio pack or you're going to switch on pay-as-you-go and then you're paying per message. Things to take into consideration. It's the same with self-service purchases and how all of these things work. Don't switch on Copilot for security. It's not Microsoft 365 Copilot, and you're going to bleed through your eyeballs because it's stupidly expensive. Understand that. If they try to sell you Copilot security, say no. It's stupidly expensive. You need 3 security compute units for it to work. You enabled it for a week and you enabled 1 SEU, right? It's usually about $2,940 per security compute unit per month. And you need 3 of them to work right. So expect a $10,000 per month bill. And if you are really serious about security, it's cool. You don't need it today. All right. So from a data access perspective, we've got agents. Don't worry about the Power Platform one. That's Karika's job. And then there's a few other things that you can switch on. And people skills, it's around the Intune stuff and not the Intune, the Viva Insights, which we're not going to talk about because we don't know if Viva's going to live tomorrow because they pulled Glint, OKRs, and a whole bunch of other things. But I'll show you some Viva things. And when you actually start going through the data security and compliance stuff, I think we want to talk about SharePoint sharing. Now, this actually doesn't happen in Purview. It actually happens in the SharePoint Admin Center. So once you buy that initial license, it will take a couple of days, but this little bad boy over here, the SharePoint Advanced Management, is going to show up, right? And when you click on it, there's a bunch of things that you can do. You can configure site lifecycle management, right? So if you want sites to be archived or deleted, there's life cycles for sites, not just retention policies for documents. You can switch that on. The cool feature we used to have in SharePoint where we could say a restricted download permission, they've now moved out of SharePoint, and that's that bad boy right there where you can actually manage access control. You can switch it on, restricted access control, and you can do some cool stuff with that. I'm not going to talk too much about that. It's at the site level restriction. I'll show you how to switch that on. Conditional access policies, this is going to take you to Enter ID, and you can configure conditional access policies, and then you've got data access governance reports. So you can actually start looking at what's going on inside of your environment, right? And you can run the block download policy now from SharePoint, but you need this license enabled for you to actually switch it on at a PowerShell level where you are restricting people from downloading documents at a site level, and you're not putting them into a SharePoint custom permission group that had the same policy. They've flipped those things around. So once you switch it on, you can then go to any site in your environment, select the site. I'm just going to choose this one. And it's actually going to switch on settings that says restricted site access. So I can edit this. And I can do that. And now I can manage who has access to this from a Copilot perspective. What is Jason saying in the chat?
I was just saying, all these new advanced management features are a lot of the tools that customers have been trying to build for the last couple of years, and is really powerful in the sense that, you know, when you're looking at an overall governance strategy or storage management strategy or security strategy, that gives you the insights that are typically hard to get. So, you know, going through each of those settings under advanced management, it's really powerful stuff there.
Look, I am still of the opinion, Jason, that when you did Graph Data Connect, that's your best friend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of the advanced management stuff. The level of granularity that you can get, and you're going to have to pay for a log analytics workspace, but if you configure and deploy Graph Data Connect inside of your environment, the granularity that you're going to get, you're not going to get out of SharePoint Advanced Management. And hold on, there's new things in here. Okay, so there's the restricted content access. I can switch it on, and then I can, this is new, Jason. I've not seen this tab, which caught me by surprise. So you can also restrict site access to specific groups. So you can exclude it and then include. So if I flip the switch here, it means that it's going to remove it from the search index for everyone, and then I can do specific things here. Well, this is also new. So that's the other thing, people. Understand that Microsoft updates stuff weekly, if not daily. So things are going to show up on the fly, but the one that you're wanting to do when you start your journey, if you've got an HR site, pivot over to SharePoint Admin Center, select the site, and just switch this bad boy on. Then at least you know straight off the bat, nobody's got access to content or sensitive information living in sites that you haven't classified yet. So that's the first thing. And then, and we also want to talk about site audits. We can do site audits using data access governance. And also, I recommend reach out to Jason if you want to know how to deploy our Graph Data Connect. Much better granularity. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is labels. Has anyone worked with Purview? Anyone seen this?
I had a short look at it, but I haven't really worked inside of it. Obviously, previously you would have dealt with it in the SharePoint Admin Center for labels and things, but I haven't played with Purview.
So, you know, when they start talking... Okay. So we actually, that little poster up there is, we built a game during COVID with Microsoft called Who Hacked, where we spent a lot of time on everything that's living inside of Microsoft Purview. They pulled the game as soon as everyone went back to work. Reichardt, Gemini, yes, boss. Not a bad platform, especially if you use more of their tools like Codex, which will vibe code she's going through security. Unlike Jackie, we're going through data security. She's going through physical security. So the things that you need to worry about here that Microsoft talks about is specifically under information protection. So for those who have never seen this, this allows you to lock down content at an object level, not only at a container level. And you'll see we switch between site level access or site level sensitivity, document library level sensitivity, and then we also talk about object level security. And for those who do not know what information protection or a sensitivity label is, in essence, it protects the Office file. In the old days, we used to create a password. So we would password protect the document, and then we send it out. And if they don't have the password, they can't see the file, the contents in the file. This is that, but on steroids. So when you create a sensitivity label, I'm just going to run through this quickly because we're already at 6:30. As soon as this comes up, I'm going to create a label, and I'm going to call it Copilot. And there's an entire program behind this, so you don't have to, literally, if you want to know more about this, I'll take you through all of this. Copilot, highly confidential. I'm just going to, well, that. Just going to put it there. I'm going to give it a description. And I'm going to select a color. And I'm going to go next. It doesn't like my invalid characters. Great. Just going to go next. And you can do it at various levels, right? I'm going to just show you the one for an object level. So I'm going to remove emails and meetings. Yes, that's fine. And I'm going to remove groups and sites. Actually, I want to put that in there. So files, but I want to show you the protection part. So I want to control access, which is the most important one. And then when we look at permissions, I can choose permissions, right? So this gives you that granular level of security where you want to protect the content inside the document. So if anyone gets a copy of that document, you'll be able to stop them from seeing content or copying content out of it. This has been around since the beginning of time, literally since 2003. It used to be called Active Directory Rights Management Services, ADRMS. You can still switch it on inside of Active Directory 2025, or at least a Windows Server 2025 as a feature. It then became information rights management, not be confused with insider risk management, because that's what IRM is currently called, insider risk and not information rights management. Then it became Azure Information Protection, and then it became Microsoft Information Protection, and then the last name, Microsoft Purview Information Protection. So what Microsoft recommends, yes, back in 2010. What Microsoft recommends is to configure this so that you actually have default labels at a SharePoint level. So if I had to, let me see if I can actually go to SharePoint. Where are we? Give me there. We just go to apps. This is all kinds of confusing. And there's SharePoint. Let's just go here. Here's a SharePoint site. And if I had to create a new library, I can create agents there, new library. I say blank, call it. You'll notice I can now apply a sensitivity label at a library level. So any documents that go into that library will inherit the label. So think about doing this when it comes to security boundaries. Let's say you mail a document to someone and they shouldn't see it and they don't have access to it and they upload it to Copilot. Copilot is label aware. So if they don't have access to content and they ask Copilot to summarize the content, it's going to check their security against that document before it summarizes the document. So understand what it does. Pretty cool stuff, right? It will be able to stop. So you don't want to indiscriminately just block people from access to content, but you do want to apply some sort of security guardrails so that if a document is protected and someone gets a copy of it, because they can download the document, doesn't mean they can see content inside of it. And it's the same for AI. And this will also apply security boundaries to third-party AI as well. It's going to prohibit you from uploading content to third-party. Well, it will allow you to upload it, but it won't be able to read it because your authentication in your security contexts, well, one, your authentication lives inside of Entra, and unless you've got some sort of SSO with a third-party AI platform, it might work, but in this case, it's going to block. So think about data leak prevention as well, where you might have sensitive data living inside of a document. Someone gets hold of that document that doesn't necessarily have access to it. AI won't read it because it's got a sensitivity label applied to it. And you can do it at a container level using sensitivity labels for document libraries. Very different to sensitivity labels for Microsoft Teams and also SharePoint sites. Does not translate in the same way. You need to do it. The container you want to protect is at a document library level. You can switch on default labels for Word documents and all of those things, or default labels for sites that you're spinning up like this. Site level labels work differently to document library levels. So if we go back to the slides, that pretty much talks to SharePoint sharing, default labels, and site audits. So SharePoint Advanced Management is your friend, where you can start protecting or restricting access to confidential information, and then going back in and applying sensitivity labels to protect that data as we go through that. And this is just a video. That's why I said the slides are pretty cool, because it will actually show you how to do all of those things. And you can actually flip the switch on a default sensitivity label for a specific library. I've just spoken about how Copilot respects classified content, and also the auto label policy would also work if you're using sensitive information in a chat. Something to also consider. Now we talk, and I'm not going to, this is not the time to talk about sensitive information types and auto apply labels and adaptive scope policies. We can do a separate session on that, but this sort of gives you an idea. If I was using that specific document and it's got a sensitivity and it's got sensitive information that we term sensitive information, it will, even though you're using Copilot to generate information, if the information is sensitive, it's going to auto apply a label, but then you need auto label policies enabled. And if you're saying that we don't allow credit card information inside of a document, and that's a 16-digit number, and at the same time you upload a voucher code, which might be a 16-digit number, to a document, it's going to apply the false positive to it. So understand that auto label policies, your regex, the way you actually write those conditions equals true, fine-grained, because 16-digit numbers or a 13-digit number doesn't mean it's a South African identity document or it's a credit card number. It's very important. You might auto label 3,000 documents because the condition is not written correctly. And then people are going to screen at the help desk because they can't get access to content. Yeah. So five takeaways. Understand, and I can't reiterate the fact, you need to know your data. For the first time in your life, you're actually going to have to go back to the business and go, how do we classify and categorize your data? Start with a spreadsheet, have a column called sensitivity and have another column called retention, and then go speak to every business unit in your organization and list the document types that you have. Is it confidential? Is it internal? Is it public? Or is it highly confidential? And you work your way backwards from there. You start with a small team and do that. In the interim, any highly confidential sites that you can earmark straight off the bat, remove it from being discovered by the semantic index so that Copilot can interrogate it. Label your sensitive data. Data access controls you need to implement, like endpoint DLP, understand the license implications of all of that. Data protection is a thing, and then obviously lifecycle from a data leak and a data loss prevention perspective, because you can do DLP policies as well on top of that. What's nice is there's guides everywhere, so all your way through your Copilot journey, if you haven't bought Copilot, there's actually things that it will take you through that process. Literally, step by step. It's a Noddy's guide, right? Step 1, step 2, purchase the license, switch certain things on. I've configured my tenant, but before I did that, there was quite a few things that I actually had to flip a switch on in order for it to run efficiently and effectively. And it also tells you what to expect. And when I jump into DSPM for AI, you'll also see it there. There's the foundational principle stuff, and then there's the advanced configurations. These links actually go somewhere. So you can click on the foundations guide. It will actually break out to, I think it's a learn article. Jason, it is a learn article, right? I'm almost sure it is.
Yeah. There's one for like E3 customers, advanced configurations will be E5 customers.
Yeah.
I'll pop them in the chat for some convenience.
Yeah. So there's a plethora of knowledge articles available to you so that you don't drive blind. Vitally important. But please follow the guides. I implore you to go through the process. Spend a couple of days understanding what these things do before you just hand out licenses to all your C-levels. So I think I've gone through the setup guide. Let's see if we can start with my mouse. Let's see if we can go back to that. There would typically be a setup guide here before this gets switched on, and it will take you through the process. I don't know if I can restart that. No, there's nothing in search.
If you go under setup, right on the left, it's under
there. Yes, damn it, yes. If I go to, just going to give me the list. Yes, all right. That's also the other thing. It's vastly confusing where all of these things live. So further down, there should be an option. Get ready for Copilot. If you click on that, you can see mine says started, and now you can actually go through the process. Here we go. So it's quite neat. I mean, you can actually read it before you click next. So I've got the licenses already, assign stakeholders. We talked about that AI council. You can do all of that here. And there's a whole bunch of information, prerequisites per service, what you need to switch up for OneDrive. Because, if I open, do I have OneDrive on here? Let me go to OneDrive. Because there's cool stuff in OneDrive, right? When you enable Copilot license, you can do a compare FAQ. You can even create an audio interview style MP3 of a document. So there's a whole bunch of things that you actually do here to switch on, right? And like Jason says, the first thing you need to do, pin the Copilot chat, right, inside of Teams. Pin it so that everyone has access to it. But it's great guidance, you go next. It's going to talk about data protection, maturity modeling. For those who don't know what that is, the Microsoft, there's an entire community doing maturity modeling when it comes to data, from a level 100 all the way to a level 300. There's multiple competencies. Sibylle van Buren, the lady that actually created the SharePoint maturity model back in like the early 2000s, it's based completely on that. There's an entire community that Mark Anderson, Simon and Sharon and a whole bunch of others, including Sue Handley, who is the information architect's architect. They all contribute to these various competencies around collaboration and a whole bunch of things. There's an entire guide around maturity modeling for your organization. Follow the guides. I'm not going to spend too much time looking at all of these things, but it's a massive guide that you can actually follow, right? And they're still calling it SharePoint Restricted Search. Oh, I don't know why they don't update these things. So that will take you through the Copilot setup guide. Massively beneficial. Spend quality time going through that. And it's in the actual slide deck, so it'll take you through all of those things so that you don't miss that. From an update channel perspective, I don't know what your tenant is set to. Is it targeted release? Is it current channel? How do you publish these things? So remember, there are things in my tenant, because I'm on targeted release, and my tenant ring, for those who don't know what rings are, Jason works for Microsoft, so I think you're on 1.5, Jason, or on 1?
I actually stay on the same as the customers so that I get a better sense of what's in the field. So I'm on, I think, monthly enterprise channel. But it's not like 1 month before or anything. It's exactly the same as what the customers are.
All right. Yeah. We recommend, if you do work on a policy of N-1, so release -1, go into the monthly enterprise channel, and that's not only for Office on the desktop, but it also includes specific features, Teams, but again, it depends, right? Office on the desktop is going to update. Teams updates periodically. Teams for web used to update every week. Teams thick client used to update every 2 weeks, but we've seen pushes to Teams clients indiscriminately, and it says, hey, update and restart, right? So there's no way to actively know when these things are actually going to come up. If you are worried about what's going on, my recommendation is to follow the M365 roadmap and also look at the Microsoft 365 Message Center so that you know what's coming. Chances are it will be announced there, and then when it rolls out, it's going to tell you what sort of impact it's going to be. So you can filter by product, and I recommend looking at Copilot. So either current channel or monthly enterprise channel, get the updates immediately so that you can, consume the best parts of this. If you are a big Microsoft Enterprise customer, you should have Unified or at least App Assure so that you understand what's going on. It's support directly from Microsoft so that you don't have to do it yourself or go and reach out to a consulting services or a managed services partner to give you support on these things. And Microsoft does, as much as they guarantee specific things. We live in a world where, it's continuous learning, and I'm only as good as the last time I touched this. And if I touched it 3 weeks ago, I guarantee you, there's nobody can call themselves an expert, because tomorrow I'll wake up and there'll be a new feature in Microsoft 365 that I didn't know about. So it's very difficult to stay up to date with what's going on. Message Center is your friend. M365 roadmap's also your friend. and please spend time there to understand what's actually going on. Some other things around deploying Copilot, specifically if you are running some sort of configuration profiles inside of your organization. Right in the beginning, you had to switch these things on. I think these policies are now available by default. I had to do a whole bunch of things to get Copilot on my desktop. You no longer have to do that if anyone's actually created policies. From an admin control perspective, I think we have actually seen this. This is an old slide. I'll jump into a quick demo. Yes, we have gone through these things. So you can collect the diagnostic logs if people are having problems with Copilot. Caveat, and as a qualification, explain to your users that sometimes Copilot falls over. Like if you go to a party and you have too much to drink and you're going downstairs and you fall over, Copilot does that, right? These things happen. Explain to your users that 99% of the time Copilot's going to act friendly, but we've all seen AI hallucinate. That dystopian world where, the first AI that they put onto Twitter, when it was still called Twitter, I think it became a weed-smoking racist. Right? And if anyone's watched Fifth Element with Corbin Dallas multipass, she's looking at the history of the world and everyone's shocked, right? So qualify this when you start talking to multipath. I actually watched Fifth Element about a month ago. Understand what you can do when you start switching these things on. Tools and resources, there's a plethora of information. I'm not going to bore you with this. There's some products that no longer exist. Is Pulse still around? No, Glint and Pulse and Goals are gone. And there's a few things that you can actually do here, and I want to show you before we jump into that. Where was it? So for those that you should have Viva switched on anyway, right? So for those that have never looked at Viva, there's a whole bunch of tools here. I don't know if you're going to buy that, but you can also enable the Copilot early adopters Viva Engage group. So if you're going to build a community of practice around tips and tricks and things, and you've never used Engage, now might be a right time to do that. It's enterprise social at scale. So we know that Facebook for Work no longer exists, but if you've never used Viva Engage, this might be a good time to start using it. It also shows up inside of Viva Learning. And you can get someone to actually deploy the Copilot Academy inside of Viva Learning. If you've never used Viva Learning and you've got an ME3, chances are this is available to you and you can use it to track. And here's an entire thing around, getting started with Microsoft 365 Copilot. And if I click on that, where does it take me to? And I'm going to say yes. And there's a nice video and description, and it gives you a nice overall view of Copilot for your end users. Outside of getting someone like Tracy into your organization to actually train your users, there are things that you can actually do inside of your organization today to at least help your users understand what lives there. So Copilot Academy, create a community of practice or a cloud center of excellence, doesn't matter what it's called. Switching on the Copilot early adopters channel, or is it a channel? Community inside of, I can't remember where I got this from. Inside of, I didn't build this myself, no. I deployed it somehow. Inside of Viva Engage, so that you can actually get a bunch of people around talking about Copilot. Give out some awards, chocolates, whatever you're calling it. Get them to learn through Viva Learning. And then there are also the other resources that's available to you. Oh, hold on, before we go there. From a monitoring perspective, that's what I wanted to show you. Now, Microsoft says go to and configure sensitivity labels in Purview, but they've also got this really cool, and I need to check the license configurations, but data security posture management for AI. It's literally available right there. Yeah. Some of these things are in preview mode. DSPM for AI should be in your tenant. It's no longer in preview. We confirm it's no longer in preview. It's no longer in preview. Not to be confused with data security posture management. This is specific to AI. So DSPM for AI is available. And there's a couple of things that you can do. Switch on Purview Audit number 1. There's a browser extension that you can switch on by default in Edge. And you can actually deploy the extension and switch it on in Chrome and Safari. What this gives you is a bird's eye view into how people are using AI, not just Copilot, AI inside of your organization. So if you, Jason, I'm not sure. You don't need a Copilot license for this. I'm 99.9% sure you don't need a Copilot license to switch this on.
Most of these are part of the E3 or E5 package. And, I think these reports and these features that we're showing here is really about how do we get some sort of analytics into Copilot. So we also call it the Copilot analytics, where you can track the adoption or the impact or the security of it or the agent usage or whatever it is. So this is all part of that, like, how do we give visibility into what people are using AI for, and like the types of information that they're feeding AI, which is, I think, where you're going with this, Al.
Yeah. So for me, if you don't have Copilot and you want to motivate for spending money on Copilot, switch this on so that you can track AI usage inside of your organization without going down the shadow IT or shadow AI route of deploying Defender for Cloud apps inside of your organization to track other AIs. Switch this on. It's going to come back and say, hey, we've got people using Google, we've got people using Anthropic, we've got people using Perplexity. Bear in mind, this is only in a browser and it's got nothing to do with any thick clients. I've got a Perplexity app running on my desktop. It's not going to sniff that. But if you want to motivate or have a view into what AI your organization is using, switch this bad boy on. And you'll be able to track those things. So there's also apps and agents, so you can actually start monitoring specific things like ChatGPT Enterprise is switched on inside of my organization. Copilot Studio I'm monitoring as well. There's the chat, and you're going to see some results come through, and I can have a look at what's going on inside of my organization. But it will also track other enterprise AI apps, like this one is Chat Enterprise. Bunch of policies that live there. Now, what's nice is it will actually configure these policies for you. You don't have to think about it. If you go to the overview tab, is it under overview? Yes. So where did I switch this on somewhere? I can't remember where I did, but it says, hey, we want to. Where was it? Under recommendation.
It was on that screen, and once you clicked activate, it kind of did that step for you.
There's some things that it will actually do for you, and it will deploy these policies. Where is it? Onboard devices. No, I don't want onboard devices. Is it this one? Yes, here we go. So it'll actually configure these policies for you without you having to think about it. So you can see I've created 2 policies, and now it's going to detect sensitive information added to AI sites. Yeah. So it plugs into Edge, Chrome, Firefox, so that it can actually monitor these things. So it's a vital tool, not only for adopting AI, but understanding what happens inside of your environment when it comes to AI. That's the one thing I did want to show you. So there's a ton of tools, technical tools, not only in the M365 Admin Center. When we actually look at Copilot here, from a usage perspective, you can start looking at agents inside of your organization, separate conversation, because every agent that gets created inside of your tenant creates an application inside of Entra ID. It creates its own application registration in Entra ID. I'm not going to talk about security about that, but I mean, I can have a look at, well, this is all the agents, not only agents that live inside of your tenant, but other agents that you can deploy. So if you ever went here and you said all agents, you'll see third-party agents that also live. And you're going to have to configure policies to say, hey, you cannot deploy shit in my environment. I built an agent, my own one, but you can see there's a whole bunch of things here. So from an access control perspective, you're going to have to do things the way Tracy always tells customers to switch on Teams creation. Otherwise, you end up with team sprawl. It's exactly the same thing. If you open the gates, everyone's going to run through. It's like Black Friday at ShopRite, right? It's the same thing. That early morning, 8 a.m., don't do it. So from a governance perspective, please spend time understanding what you want to switch on. Because if you just switch it on, you give someone a Copilot license, you're going to end up in shit. Or you're going to give someone a Copilot Studio license. And remember, if I've got a Copilot license, I can build an agent. Yes. So make sure that you know what you're doing when it comes to all these cool settings here. So we can build agents, who can't build agents, understand that great power comes great responsibility. My spidey senses are tingling. And then going back to what we were talking about, I mean, there's some tools here. Go through these things. There's a Viva Engage. There's the Copilot adoption community, the Copilot Academy we talked about. If anyone's using Viva Amplify to drive communications internally, I don't know if you've got the license. There's a Copilot campaign in a box that you can download that will drive that to SharePoint, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, Outlook, and Engage. Yes. And I've got 2 minutes. All right. Also, I talked about a scenario library. Please go spend time on this so that you can help your users understand what Copilot actually does inside of your organization. We talked about Viva Engage. Run through that. Use it as your platform for communications, informal communications. When you bring a group of people that are using Copilot, they can share their experiences there. I hate the land and expand because that's a sales pitch, so I'm going to skip that slide. We talked about Copilot Academy. There's a ton of stuff under Microsoft Learn and also Copilot Lab functionality so that you can try things before you actually do it in practice. I'm not worried about that. This is all in the deck. We looked at the reporting side because I'm running out of time. Extend and optimize. No, we talked about the Microsoft. What is Mocha, Tracy? Modern collaboration architecture. It's right there.
Correct.
Yeah. So, sorry, Jason. They've co-piloted the Mocha documentation. Massively frustrating, but they've now co-piloted everything. There's Copilot everywhere. Look under your chair. We talked about the hub, the Copilot Success Kit. All this documentation is available to you. So a couple of final thoughts from my side. Know your data, vitally important. Otherwise, this is just going to become a catch and release program for data that might be sensitive or not sensitive, or might live for 5 years or live for 55 years. SharePoint is not Metrofile. Files don't go there to live out the rest of their lives. Please fix your data. Auto labeling is not easy. You need a high level of maturity. So head over to the maturity modeling for Microsoft 365. There's an entire community. If you get to level 400, I'm not even saying 500. If you get to level 400, where it's not ad hoc, then by all means switch on auto label policies. It's not just about Copilot, because I guarantee you people in your organization are using other AIs already. And they're probably using Copilot Chat to find out creme brulee, a recipe, because the way they make creme brulee sucks, right? Continuously monitor and understand AI usage patterns inside of your organization, because not everyone is a happy employee. Disgruntled employees find means and ways, especially the script kiddies in your building, because they will vibe code at home using Gemini and then try and bring that and break your AI inside of your environment. Most importantly, you need to educate your staff on the usage of AI. It's not just a 7-word. That's the average amount of words used in a prompt is 7 words. This is not search, people. This is not search. You need to understand how to write a decent prompt. And then lastly, from my side, you need to adopt a methodology of continuous evaluation and continuous assessment to understand what AI does inside of the organization so that you can stay on top of AI inside of your organization.